Hello, and welcome to the Full Quota podcast, your weekly South African not sporting, cricketing podcast. We've got some live cricket coming up, so we'll be talking about that today because South Africa are in Sri Lanka. They're in Colombo, and they're playing against Sri Lanka this week. And so today's topic is the series preview. We're going to be previewing the series. I've got Tsepo, I've got Chris. Gents, how are you doing?
I guess I'll start. Tsepo looks quite quiet. I'm very well, thanks. Happy to be back after a short hiatus.
Yeah, I'm also good. I was literally saying the same thing. Like, Chris, it's been so long, bro. I didn't even know where you've been. Welcome
and
back.
It's good that whilst Tim's out, we're swapping out. One of us has to be here all the time.
Rotation.
And on this day, obviously, Dale Steyn has retired. So, gents, like, Chris, what do you make of that? 699 international wickets, an average of 23. Is he the greatest ever South African seamer?
Well, yeah, I guess I have to say, limited experience. He's definitely the greatest in my lifetime. He'd have competition with, I guess, Pollock and Teeny Donald, but the best I've seen. He was top 2 in the world for 10 years straight and number 1 for the majority of that. Test bowling, all 3 formats, but predominantly I think he'll be remembered as a test bowler that was head and shoulders above anyone at the same time.
And Tsepo, what do you make of Dale? You're a Titans man. You watched Dale played in the North for a very long time.
Yeah, no, actually, my cricketing journey started with him. I saw him in the domestic sphere just as he was going up, and that's also when I started getting into cricket. So sort of been rooting for the guy for a long time. And look, I'm glad that his awesome careers, he's decided to land it, go do that skateboarding stuff that he does on Instagram. I like that he's like enjoying his life. He looks like a really cool person to like have a beer with as well. So yeah, really happy for the man for what he's done, for all his achievements, because he's a legend, probably one of, if not the best South African bowler in the history.
Outside of the wickets. From an average perspective, I do think he is one of the greatest bowlers ever. But obviously, the English will tell us about Jimmy Anderson and all the other guys in every country. But I say one of the greatest South Africa has ever had. So now we're going to be talking about that. But before we do this, remember, you can interact with us on all these platforms, Twitter, Facebook, also Instagram, as well as YouTube. We are going to be going live tonight at 8 p.m., for the South African Women's Tour in the West Indies. It's going to be streamed on everyone's phones, but we will be supporting them by providing our live radio broadcast. Remember, you can go to SLvSA.com if you don't want to see our lovely faces. If you do want to see our lovely faces, you can obviously join us on YouTube. Most importantly, you would need to subscribe. I wouldn't say like you can like our podcast, but you can subscribe to our channel, switch that notification bell, and at 8 p.m. when we go live, South Africa women versus West Indies women, there is no Stefanie Taylor, but Deandra Dotton and Anisa Mohammed are there, so it's going to be a really good challenge for our women. But we're talking SA Sri Lanka preview, and we got Estelle Vasudevan, who is a editorial manager at the papare.com, and she's going to be giving us insight on the Sri Lankan team. Lots to unpack. They've also got some off-field issues. So it could be the series of the off-field drama teams, but we'll see about that. Let's get her on and discuss all things Sri Lanka versus South Africa. Hi, Estelle. How are you doing?
Hi, guys. How are you doing? I'm doing great.
Sure. Estelle, I think from us, first question is, how has obviously Sri Lanka's come out of that series with India? How are they preparing for the South African series? Are there any expectations or any things that the Sri Lankan team want to get right, especially looking at the World Cup and even with the Super League?
Yeah, I think the India series was a very good one for Sri Lanka in the fact that despite not having some of the first choice players in the lineup, they were able to put up somewhat of a good fight against an Indian team, which was under strength, but they still did have a lot of experience in the squad. In terms of the build-up to the tournament, I think, this series, Sri Lanka Cricket organized this T20 series between 4 sides, I think it was very important. It was an important series because the cricket was very competitive. Basically had the best players in Sri Lanka come up against each other. I think the only guys who were missing from the current crop of players were Wanindu Hasaranga, Dushmantha Chamira, who were given some time off. But other than that, I think preparation was good. They did organize it with their eyes on the T20 World Cup, and of course, the South Africa series will be the ideal build-up for that tournament as well.
Okay, that's quite exciting to see an internal tournament. I think a lot of South Africans have been asking for such a tournament amongst our international players. But Chris, what do you think South Africa are hoping for in this ODI series and possibly looking to the T20 series? We've seen two different squads, but what do you think the idea from Mark and the team is for both these series?
Yeah, I guess it's similar to what we had against the West Indies and against Ireland, where the ODIs, you are trying to find your team, but you're also trying to pick up some points in the ODI Super League. And then the T20s, you're trying to figure out your best 11, find your combinations, maybe test your depth. And the T20s very much are preparation for the World Cup at the end of the year.
Okay, and Temple, obviously we've come out of the West Indies and Ireland Test series, limited over series wins. What are you hoping to just continue as a South African side, just try build up momentum, winning, kind of get you confidence type of vibes?
Yeah, no doubt. The South African camp are definitely going to be looking for a win, as are the Sri Lankan camp. That's pretty obvious. But I mean, one thing that the South Africans will definitely be looking to is how they deal with spin. We were speaking about it on last week's podcast with Dan, and how in the West Indies we weren't really tested with spin. In Ireland we weren't tested with spin. So I'm really keen to see how the South Africans with the bat will fare with the spin, and then also our own spin bowlers. Also chats about the lack of leg spin that we have, even though we have decent.
We've only got one leg spinner in South Africa.
One leggy.
and we interviewed him 2 weeks ago. Actually, it was Sean von Berg. But he's not. He was in the last tour to Sri Lanka, but he was playing red ball cricket. Didn't get a game. Even though Tabrez Shamsi came to South African, and we'll watch that podcast or watch the video. It's live on our YouTube channel. Estelle, there are a lot of faces that South African fans would know that aren't there this time, and can you give us an inkling as to why? I think we know that obviously Gunatilaka, Tikwela, and Mendes won't be around. Is there a reason why, and are there any more players that may not be there?
Yeah, so the three guys you mentioned, of course, were banned from international cricket as a result of a breach of the biobubble in England. So basically, they'll be out of international cricket for a year, domestic cricket for 6 months, and they've also been handed a financial ban. Other than them, of course, Angelo Matthews will not be playing. He has made himself unavailable for selection, at least for the time being. So that's one guy who'll be missing. Isru Udana, another one, retired from all forms of international cricket, I should say. Another guy is Kusal Pereira, who I think would have been a real key for Sri Lanka at the top of the order. Unfortunately, he was diagnosed with COVID a couple of weeks ago, so he's recovering. I think he should be available for the T20s, but we won't see him in the ODI games.
Okay. That's actually... Yes, Chris?
Sorry. This is perhaps me just being cynical, but do you think that if that video hadn't been taken by a fan, whether we would see any suspensions, or it's because that there's suddenly public eyes on it and it was brought to attention that the suspensions had to come out?
Yeah, I think so, because one thing I think we need to understand is the fact that Sri Lanka were not doing well. Like, they were doing really badly during that series, so that kind of made it worse for those players, as it were. So yeah, like you said, if that video had not come out, we don't even know if people would have found out that they had breached the bubble. That's one thing. The other thing is, I really don't think that there would have been such a harsh punishment. A lot of people think it's way over what they should have gotten. But the players have appealed at least to play domestic cricket, but so far there's no word on what will happen. But yeah, definitely, I think the video really didn't help their cause at all.
So then, my question is, what's the feeling? Obviously you're not like in the change room, so you can't like tell us exactly what's going on. But I mean, how does it feel in Sri Lanka as at the moment? You have a touring side, South Africa coming through. You don't have your top players. Bio bubble. To me, it seems a bit unjustified to keep them out of international cricket for an entire year, just because the video was out. I think it's a bit harsh. Personally, but I like how does it? What's like the feeling around some Sri Lankan fandom?
Yeah, I think to be honest, after the India series, I think everyone's a bit upbeat because for a long time before that, Sri Lanka were doing very badly, and so there were calls for. I mean, the decision to leave out some of the senior players didn't go down too well with the fans, and then the team still wasn't doing well. So guys like Gunatilaka, Kusal Mendis, Digbala, three guys who actually got a lot of attention during that time because they were not performing. So at the moment, among the fandom at least, I think a lot of them are kind of happy with the team we have now because there are a lot of youngsters coming through and some promise shown during the series against India.
Speaking about those youngsters coming through, I know that Pulina Taranga is in, and in that invitational domestic series that happened, he took the most amount of wickets. Can you give us a sense of the type of player he is? Because obviously South Africans wouldn't know, and also any of the other people who are back. I know Nuwan Pradeep is back, so like what were the reasons for him coming back, essentially?
Yeah, Pulina Taranga is, I think, quite similar to Wanindu Hasaranga in his leg spin. Typically, a limited overs bowler. He doesn't flight the ball much, but gets good purchase, particularly in the type of tracks we see in Sri Lanka. He's a really good fielder, can bat a bit as well. I don't think we will see much of him during the series if Hasaranga is available because there are a few other options. I think Sri Lanka will be looking at like someone like Akila Dhananjaya, who's had success against South Africa before as well, and also Praveen Jayawickrama, left arm spinner, who's done well both in Test cricket as well as in limited overs cricket. He's only played a few matches, but he's done well. In terms of Pradeep, there was always this thought that he's your go-to death bowler, but in the recent past he has not done well. But I think he earned a call up thanks to his performance during the domestic competition we just had. Again, I don't think he will be in the playing 11 at least for the first few games because Sri Lanka will likely go with Dushmantha Chamira and Chamika Karunaratne, maybe left armer Binura Fernando, but Pradeep might find it difficult to make it into the playing 11.
Okay. I think for now, as we move into obviously discussion what's going to happen on the field, from a balance perspective, what does Sri Lanka, what do you think Sri Lanka is going to go into that first? Oh yeah, from a balance perspective, will they be going 3 spinners? Will they be going 2 with a few seamers? What's the sense that you're getting from the squad?
Yeah, looking at the tracks that were on offer during the India series, I think, and particularly because South Africa does have a reputation for not being too good against the spinners, I think there's a real chance that they will go with 3 frontline spinners. So, to me, the front runners would be Akila Dhananjaya, Wanindu Hasaranga, and Praveen Jayawickrama. So you've got a left arm, a leg spinner, and an off spinner. They've also got kind of a Ajantha Mendis-like guy in the squad called Mahesh Theekshana. Could also get a game or 2 depending on how well Sri Lanka go early in the series. So if they do go with the 3 spinners, I think Chamika Karunaratne and Dushmantha Chamira will be the paces with Dasun Shanaka probably chipping in as well.
As an all-rounder. Okay. Chris and Teppo, I'm going to start with Chris. From a balance perspective of South Africa, what do you think is the best balance for this team to actually try and counter what Sri Lanka is going to offer coming into the series?
I guess there would be the temptation to go with 3 spinners, but unfortunately, as we've been saying, we don't have a lot of variation on our spinners. So obviously it'll be Shamsi, and then one of 3 players are almost exactly the same in Maharaj, Linda and Bjorn Fortuyn. I would imagine we don't go with 3 spinners, no matter how spinny the track is. Maybe that's just the way South Africa always is. Us playing a spinner at all was an issue for a long time. I don't think we'd go for 3 spinners like that.
And Temple, do you agree with Chris? I think obviously we probably won't go with 3 spinners. I'd like to see a game where we do play a third spinning all rounder, maybe a Keshav and a Linda. But how important do you think Kagiso and Anouk Nokia will be at the top for the side?
Very important, just because that's just the way we sort of play. I mean, it would be strange for us to leave out our premier pace bowlers, and surely they might not get as much movement as they would with the red ball, but they can still do a thing or two, and they can still. I mean, the premium fast bowlers. But I think for me, how we should probably be responding in terms of the team balance is all-rounders. I do not mind a third spinner if that spinner is a spinning all-rounder. We need batting depth. That is what we need, because I don't expect us to get big runs here. The pitch is slow, the ball's going to come on slow, and we really enjoy the big shots from very pacey balls. So I think just to cushion the batting lineup, we'd probably need some depth there in the batting, and all-rounders are the solution to that.
Chris, with the inclusion and the return of Dwayne Pretorius, that obviously answers the question is who bats at number 6. But obviously 7, 8, and possibly even 9 could be an issue in these ODIs, and maybe even into the T20s. Where do you sit with the all-rounders? Do you want 3 all-rounders? A lot of people have been asking for South Africa to play all three of the all-rounders that are available in Petlogwaya, Mulder, or Linda with Dwayne. Where's your thinking around that?
Well, yeah, we were talking about how much we miss Dwayne, or that Dwayne-shaped player, whether it's Dwayne or Chris Morris, the guy who's an all-rounder but can bowl as well as the frontline seamers. So I'd be happy to go with just Rabada and Nokia, and then perhaps cycle in and Gideon Williams as the out-and-out seamers, but just 2 out-and-out seamers, and then Dwayne Pretorius as the third seaming option. Yeah, exactly where he comes into the lineup. Maybe this is the testing ground where we figure out who exactly we favor between Petlogwaya and Mulder as the other seaming all-rounder. And then I think George Linda probably is the first choice spinning all-rounder.
I believe that Petlogwaya is probably going to be playing the ODIs, and the T20s are going to be for Mulder, or at least that's how I see the squad set up. So I'm very excited to see Vian Mulder. Just pace off the ball in general, I think could be a proper way of attacking. It worked for us in the West Indies. Obviously, not exactly the same conditions, but we don't want Sri Lanka to be scoring maybe too quickly. Or speaking of the pace on the ball as well, the big boys can really bully the Sri Lankan batsmen, not used to that express pace as often as that. You know, it's not like Sri Lanka doesn't have the pace, but I mean, when you hit with like premier fast bowler after premier fast bowler, you know, it could sort of wear you down in a way. So yeah, the competition seems very exciting.
Estelle, you've been listening to us talk about the South African team and the balance. Are there players in South Africa, or are there any of the South African players that you think Sri Lanka would struggle to face, or the converse, where you think maybe Sri Lanka might actually just enjoy and have a good and either enjoy scoring runs or taking wickets against? Where does the Sri Lanka team see the South African side, or how actually?
Yeah, I think the pace is definitely are going to be a challenge. I think that's something that Captain Dasun Chanaka also wanted to focus on in training, facing really quick bowlers, because we don't have bowlers that bowl that quick and are as accurate as guys like Rabada. So I think the series itself, particularly the ODIs, in my opinion, will be decided by how well Sri Lanka play the South African paces and how well South Africa play the Sri Lankan spinners. So it's going to be a battle between the bowling sides, I think, because Sri Lanka, like you mentioned, we're missing a few of first choice players in the batting lineup, but the spinners and the fast bowlers, or at least some of them have had some, they've had some momentum coming up to the series. So they should be raring to go. So the batsmen will be the ones, I think, who will decide how well the team does during these two, the ODI and the T20 series.
Chris?
Just because you briefly mentioned Shanaka, and it reminded me that Sri Lanka's gone through, I think, 7 ODI captains and 6 T20 captains in the last 3 years, and he's the latest. And there's conspiracy theories as to exactly why he's been given the captaincy recently, but he's obviously won the T20 series now. Do you see him as a long-term captain choice for Sri Lanka, or do you think that's a temporary position that he has?
At first, I don't think anyone would look at him and think that he is a long-term option. But over the past, I think, since the India series, and particularly during the most recently concluded the domestic T20 series, he did show a lot of characteristics of a good leader. I think one of the key aspects was how his team were victorious in the tournament and how he used some of the young players. He didn't have the best squad, but he did have a lot of 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds in his team, and was not afraid to kind of give them the opportunity. So that's, I think, a very really good sign, particularly when you think about the type of people Sri Lanka have at their disposal now. They don't have a lot of the experienced players, so the way the captain can handle maybe the younger players, the less experienced players, will be a key. So from what I've seen in the past couple of months, definitely he could be a long-term option.
Okay, and he played really well in South Africa when Sri Lanka were here. So he kind of came into his own, especially in the tests. Just one, looking at your batting lineup, are there any players that you think? Because obviously they as we spoke about, key players are, but are there any youngsters, young players, young batsmen in there that you think this could be a series for them to step up, or are there any batsmen who need to score runs in this series to either keep their World Cup hopes alive or give themselves an opportunity going forward?
Yeah, I think Avishka Fernando will be a key for Sri Lanka. He'll particularly without Kusal Pereira in the lineup. So he's a guy who plays pace well. So I think he will hold the key for Sri Lanka in that, giving them a good start, trying to steady the innings. Also, another guy I think who's done relatively well after a bad start to his career is Charit Asalanka, another guy who's, since he was a teenager, has been kind of earmarked to be the next big thing in Sri Lanka cricket, but didn't really look that in his first series in England. But he's really come through a little bit over the last couple of months. So another guy I think to keep an eye on. It'll be interesting to see the batting lineup Sri Lanka go with, because I don't think there's a settled 3-4-5. Um, Particularly because they will need to accommodate guys like Asalanka, Dhananjay De Silva, who are more like accumulators rather than guys who can, go for the shots like Shanaka. So depending on that, I think it should be interesting to see how they adjust, because um, you, all over the world, your number 5 is the guy who kind of, can take on the bowling. But Sri Lanka don't really have many batsmen like that. So be good to see how guys like Asalanka and maybe Dhananjay De Silva, Bhanuka Rajapaksa can adjust in that 3, 4, 5, 6 kind of slots.
Okay. Tsepo, from a batting perspective, what do you want to see from South Africa? Obviously, you've got Aiden Markram in the side in the ODIs. You've got Riza Hendrix there, and Yanuman Malan at the top, and that's a question of who's going to open. And then after that, it's Temba Rassi. There is no David Miller, so that's going to be quite interesting to see if it's Heino Klaasen or Kyle Verreynne. Where are you on the two questions of number 5, Kyle Verreynne or Heino Klaasen, and possibly even number 6, maybe does Dwayne bat at 6, and also who opens? I'm assuming Yanuman is going to open, and then you just need a partner for him. But obviously, you may things see differently.
Sure, that's a very tough question to answer. I won't lie, because I think we're still in the process of finding the last piece of the puzzle. We sort of know who's at the top order, who's at the middle order, and yeah, you want to give everybody a chance, and you do want everybody to succeed so that we have the potential to be able to rotate in a tournament. Not necessarily for people getting tired, but I mean, people can get injured. Like, what if Quinton de Kock gets injured? Now we need two batsmen that are already there at the front. After doing like a lot of checking into stats, I would like to see Yanaman Malan and Aiden Markram at the top again. They looked really good against Pakistan and South Africa. And yeah, when one is firing, like both of them can fire, both of them can get quick runs, and Temba Bavuma sort of, as Estelle said, is more of an accumulator. You know, it's not like he can't put foot to the gas. He does have the ability to hit the strike rates up, but you sort of want level heads, like you'd want his level head there because he has the ability to do that, and that's where Rassie van der Dussen also slots in. But then talking about number 5, to be honest, I'd like to see Hydrick Klaasen there. It's about time that this man takes himself seriously and get some big runs. He needs to get a big score. He owes us a score. He can get a score. So I'm looking forward to Heinrich Klaasen putting pedal to the metal, and maybe Kyle Verreynne getting a small opportunity here and there. I don't back him for right now. He's not Mr. Right Now, but I do back him for the future. I do feel like this experience will do him a lot of good. So I do hope to see him in the subcontinent wielding the blade. So yeah,
there are a lot of people in Cape Town right now who are gonna probably asking for your address because they believe we should be building this team around Kyle Verreynne. Chris, where do you sit on the questions around the batting, especially in the ODI side?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You seem pretty sure that Yanaman Malan will be one of the openers. I think this will be a very good test.
He averages like 125. He averages a ridiculous amount.
But this is where he can, obviously he's done very well in the ODIs so far, but the one big doubt that everyone has about him, it's almost the first thing people mention, is his weakness against spin. So this will be a good test and a time for him to put those rumors to bed. He will be tested, but he's just in the ODI squad, isn't he? He's not playing in the T20s for whatever reason. So we'll only get to see him there.
I did forget to mention Riza Hendrix, who's somehow slipped under the radar, but he has been getting relatively decent scores. And I think the problem with our South African openers is that no one is like, wow, oh my gosh, Riza Hendrix just took it out of the block. Like, it's like, oh, Riza Hendrix, well done. You got yourself 40 off like 38, that's not bad, but we're not going to win a match with you. So I really want the South African openers to get into
you're probably going to kill me, and the whole of Pretoria is going to kill me. I actually don't think Aiden and Riza should be in Sri Lanka for the ODI side. Maybe T20s, yes, fine, but they both averaged 26 after 52 games, 1 century, 4 half centuries between them. I think we may have missed a trick not giving somebody else domestically an opportunity like a Grant Rulofsson or a Ryan Rickleton, who Grant was number 1 in run scorers in the Momentum One Day Cup last season, and Ryan was number 3, and he's an opener lefty as well. To replace Quinny kind of would have worked. And also Zubair Hamza was number 2 in the run scoring chart. So I think we may have missed the trick, but because we've got them there, for those two, whoever opens with the Yanaman on the other side, it's kind of like a last chance saloon. You can't have played 31 games as Aiden Markram in ODIs and only averaged 26 and have not scored a century in this thing. So for me, it's quite interesting, but I do know that he's gotten form. So they're trying to play him into form, which is odd, but it's something that we need to figure out. But for me, the most important thing is how Yanaman handles spin. Obviously, I think he can handle the Sri Lankan paces, but once you get to past over 10, moving to over 15 into those middle overs, where he probably will be batting based on the average that he has, how he handles a Hasaranga, an Akila Dhananjaya, how he manages them is something that we're going to be quite interested. I'm going to be quite interested in seeing, because that's, as Chris says, that's his only crime. That's the only reason why he's not in the T20 squad, because somehow the reputation is he can't play spin. But I think for me, Estelle, what players from Sri Lanka are the keys to unlocking the ODI series? And then on top of that, the T20. So I know we're looking to the Super League and the ODIs, but obviously for both teams looking to the World Cup in in 6 weeks' time. So so both series, which players in Sri Lanka are key to a series win on both ends?
Yeah, it's going to be the same guys in both series. Vanindu Hasaranga, Dushmantha Chamira, Dasun Shanaka, and Avishka Fernando, I think, are going to be the keys. Avishka Fernando is going to have to carry a load with the batting, I feel, because there is a big gap there without Kusal Pereira in the team. Of course, he'll hopefully be back for the T20, so that should clear things out there. But yeah, those four guys definitely. Shanaka with the bat, I'm interested to see how he goes against someone like Shamsi, another guy who has a reputation for not playing wrist spinners too well. So with the form he's shown in the last couple of weeks, I'd really be interested to see that matchup.
Okay. Chris and Teppo. Yes, Chris?
I was just going to say on Hasaranga and Shamira, obviously, the first half of the IPL didn't have any Sri Lankan players, and a couple of Sri Lankan players have been included. How important do you think that will be in developing those players, and how seriously should we take it that there are some Sri Lankan players now in the IPL? How useful will it be?
I think it's massively important for both of them because in Sri Lankan domestic cricket, you don't get a lot of day-night games. You don't get crowds. Those kind of things really affect players now in international cricket. In fact, guys like Isuru Udana have mentioned it as well. You know, the impact of having a crowd yelling at you when you're fielding, things like that. Sri Lankan domestic cricketers they don't face it at all until they get to international cricket. So guys like Vanindu and Dushmantha going into the IPL, I think hopefully will be the start of a few more, making their way through because we see a lot of, um, you know, uh, guys from Australia who no one has heard of getting IPL contracts. But, some guys who performed well, I think even during the draft last year, there was a bit of disappointment that Hasaranga was not picked up by somebody. So I think hopefully it's the start of getting our feet back into the IPL because we've had, I mean, over the years, guys like Mahela, Sangakkara, even Matthews played in the IPL. So hopefully it's the start of something. Personally, I think it's a really good thing for their development as players.
Thank you.
That is actually quite true. Obviously, Hasaranga is now I think top 3 T20 bowler in the world. So it is about time that we need to stop selecting those Australians we do not know and have not heard, and actually look at, because even Shamsi got a contract, and it's one of those situations where it's about time he got some respect. But Chris and Teppo, from an ODI perspective, who are the players that you think will be key for South Africa in securing a series win? And then we'll talk about some of the T20 questions after this.
Chris, do you want to go first or shall I? I'll go first.
Yeah, go for it.
Sweet. So yeah, I think number one, it has to be Captain Temba Bavuma. Not just in terms of the runs. He's been running a pretty tight ship. Problems that we had, he basically addressed, or yeah, it seems like there's a plan. And I just want to see that as a captain, he has a plan and leadership structures are okay because there's been a lot of turmoil and I don't want it to get into the cricket. So yeah, he has a big challenge on his hands. So yeah, also Aiden Markram, basically the middle order batsmen. They need to get their act together now. It's time. Top order has been doing a lot of work in the power plays before, but now it's time for the likes of Heinrich Klaassen to really step up because the only way we're going to win a game is if everybody contributes. And right now, the middle order is where it's been a bit choppy. And then finally with the bowling, I think, I don't know. I want to say that our spin bowlers are going to do it for us because our spin bowlers are absolute class. But I mean, maybe the pace bowlers can come with something that the Sri Lankan batsmen just can't handle. So I'd like to see how we go about our bowling and how the Sri Lankans fare against it.
Mm-hmm. Chris, outside of what Teppo named, are there any keys that you think players who will win it for SA from an ODI perspective?
Yeah, I guess we're still sort of figuring out the the seamers outside of Nokia and Rabada, they're very much known entities, and they're going to get bowled basically every chance they get in the IPL. So maybe we try to test some of our other seamers. And Lungi Ngidi had a troubling West Indies tour, but picked it up right near the end and then did it right against Ireland. I really like to see Lungi Ngidi, who I think made his T20 debut against Sri Lanka, continue with the form that he's had against them and have him stand up so we know exactly who our third choice seamer is.
Yeah, well, obviously for the ODIs, Lungi is not going to necessarily be there. He'll be coming in for the T20s with the other IPL guys. But I think from my perspective, Rassie van der Dussen is important to the side. He is the anchor to this ODI side. Average is 75. Like if Sri Lanka get his wicket early, chances of South Africa scoring 300 diminish instantly. Unless if Yadam and Malan or the openers have done quite well. I think it's an important series, as you say, for Timber. I think Timber needs the runs. He's had a great start to ODI cricket. So I think from a captaincy perspective, I think it would calm the team with a captain on form. But I think from a spinning perspective, from a bowling perspective, obviously Dwayne. But this is an important series for George Linder. If he's going to be your spinning all-rounder, left-arm spinner, he's going to have to take wickets in these conditions in the middle overs. And then obviously Andile Phehlukwayo, for me, it feels like it's a last chance saloon for him. If he doesn't do it now, I think he's probably going to be out of the Proteas setup for quite some time. Yes, he had COVID and he's been injured. And I hate to say this, I think he's been mismanaged throughout the West Indies and Ireland. But I do need Andile. We do need Andile batting well and B, bowling well as well. But I think for me, those are the things. The one question, Estelle, before we just talk a little bit about T20s, is will the ground will the grounds in Sri Lanka right now support the pace of the express pace of Rabada and Nokia? We've got a question from YouTube from around that.
Yeah, I really don't see that being too much assistance for the pace bowlers because, like I mentioned before, South Africa is known to struggle a bit against the spinners, and Sri Lanka struggles a bit against the pace. So from what we saw during the last series that was held at the same venue, I don't think there'll be too much assistance, but there might be a bit of swing on offer for the bowlers. So I think that's where guys like Rabada can capitalize. But of course, with the pace that they possess, they'll be able to extract something, I think, out of any surface.
Yeah, that is. We saw that last year in the UAE in the IPL where Anuf Nokia bowled 155 kilometers per hour. Estelle, from a T20 perspective, I know Sri Lanka picked one side for both series. Are the plans for the World Cup on the right path? Will there be drastic changes from a T20 perspective that we will see compared to the ODIs?
I don't think there'll be too many changes, mainly because I think the squad has been picked more for the T20s than really thinking too much about the ODIs. I don't know whether Sri Lanka having to play the qualifiers for the World Cup is kind of like a foregone conclusion now with the results they've got so far. But in terms of building up to the World Cup, I think there are a few questions still to be asked. The bowling, definitely, I think a few players have really, cemented their places. Hasaranga Chamir and also Chamika Karunaratne has done very well with both bat and ball. So those three guys are more or less, the staples in the bowling lineup. The batting is where the issues are. So, in my opinion, it's still up for grabs. Anyone could make it. They've named a 30-man squad, so there's kind of a wider group of players also included in the training group. So I think apart from Kusal Pereira and Dasun Shanaka, I don't know if anyone else is kind of cemented their place. So there are spots up for grabs. Depends on whether those guys will get the opportunities before the World Cup to kind of prove themselves.
And what's the feel in Sri Lanka around the qualifying tournament before the World Cup and the group that they're in? Seems quite a quite a tough group that Sri Lanka find themselves in to qualify for the main. I think they call themselves the Super 12s of the T20 World Cup.
Yeah, I think overall, I think most people are confident that Sri Lanka will get through that first stage of the tournament, unless there's like a massive, upset. I think particularly because of the types of pitches we can expect there. It will, from what we've seen in the past, probably play into Sri Lanka's hands a little bit, because the tracks are expected to be a little slow. Um, so in that, if you consider all those aspects, I think Sri Lanka still do have a very, very good chance of making it through that first part. But I'm sure Mickey Arthur wouldn't want to take any of the teams they're coming up against lightly, because we've seen, lots of upsets in the recent past when it comes to, World Cups.
That is quite true. Chris and Sepp, I'm going to start with Chris. From a T20 perspective, South Africa have quite a lot of questions, largely around the batting. Obviously, the team struggling to get over 170, even though maybe 170 has been par for both the series. What changes would you like to see, or what would you like to see in this T20 series with only 3 games to the World Cup?
Yeah, very limited changes in the T20s. I think that's where we're just trying to make little small adjustments. We're getting closer to knowing what our first choice 11 is. And what I was talking about earlier, I forgot we were talking about the ODIs. It is figuring out whether Lungi Ngiri's at third team or whether it's Lazard Williams. It's small changes. I don't want to see any overhauls from the sides that we played, especially against the West Indies. I think that was mostly our first choice side, and then Ireland as well. Keep it pretty consistent.
And Tsepo, you've always spoken on this podcast about the plan that you see from the Proteas. Is it same old, or do you want to see something different?
I think it's same old, same old. I think I don't prioritize us getting scores over 200 because I just don't expect big scores on slow pitches. So if we get to like 160 again, I'll be very happy. And also, as we heard from Estelle, it's not like Sri Lanka have the most devastating batting lineup out there. So we need to play our opposition and play our opposition well. Just make sure that we get like safe runs. We don't need to throw away our wickets. I want to see some mature batting, and I want to see us negotiate the spin as well as we can. If we go out, if all 10 wickets are chowed, then I'm going to be very disappointed. So I want us to preserve our wickets. They're going to be difficult wickets to preserve, but take that seriously while still getting a decent amount of runs. Play the opposition and play properly. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree with you. I think we're at the door of the World Cup, barring any massive injuries. I don't think this 11 will change. There is that possibility that Faf might come back, so watch the space. It would be wild to see what it does to the dressing room, but I do think Faf's a gentleman and a great guy, so I do think he might. It won't be too catastrophic. However, South Africa's questions at the top: if it's Temba and Quinton, how they navigate the power play. In the middle overs, in the middle order, where does Aiden fit? Where does Rassie fit? Those are the questions we need to answer. Where does David Miller fit? Does David Miller come in at 4 or does he bat at 5? Especially with Dwayne coming in. So those are the things that I'd be looking out for. But most importantly, how they score runs and accumulate runs and score boundaries. I think for me, that's something I'm going to be watching, how they score boundaries on slower pitches. Against the West Indies, they really did struggle, and we saw that in I think that first game where we got blown out by Evan Lewis at the top with boundary hitting. And if you come across a team that can hit boundaries like that, it'd be a little bit tough for you. Yes, Chris?
Yeah, that's the one thing I'm super worried about playing England. I think we're playing them at Sharjah, which is quite a small ground, and that is a frightening side. I think we don't just have to play well. We can almost play our best game and they play an average game, and we still lose that. We need England to play a bad game as well. I'm quite frightened about that.
We just need Australia to beat England. That's all I need. But I need to beat Australia. We need to beat Australia for that World Cup. We could still meet Sri Lanka there, and there's a very interesting situation there. We might even bring Estelle on for that. But Estelle, do you have any questions for us around that you want to get from a South African camp?
Yeah, no, I was just like you guys discussed about your pace bowling attack. Do you guys see them trying to use that mainly as the weapon against Sri Lanka? But at the same time, you do also have good spin bowlers. So, how does that kind of balance out with the bowling lineups?
Chris Tsepo, who would like to take that? I think we all have different
Okay.
views, but Chris, let's start with you.
Uh, yeah, I think we try to play to our strengths because it's not quite the same, but we know often when we go to India and try to play them at the same game, and when we try to play spin with spin, especially in the test, that just doesn't work out. So we'll use Shamsi because he is a strength no matter the pitches. Even if the pitches aren't turning, he's still such a good spin bowler. And then probably are relying on the seamers a bit more. And then George Linda will probably play a holding role. I don't think he's really an attacking option. So Shamsi's the wicket taker. He can take wickets and keep the economy down at the same rates, and then maybe relying on Mulcair and Rabada to be the wicket takers and aggressors as well.
Simple.
I think depending on whether it's ODIs or T20s, with T20s, I see us using our medium paces just to get like a bit of variation. So I do see us like coming with express pace at the to open the innings in the first power play and also at the death. But then in the middle overs, just make it very difficult to score runs. I don't expect us to continuously like try to power you with the with bowling, because what could happen is you could get a thick edge that could run for four. And we could leak runs unnecessarily. And as I said, I don't expect us to be getting a lot of runs in the first place to be willy nilly with our pace bowling. So yeah, that's how I see us using it. In the ODIs, it'll be a bit more interesting. I won't lie, I've been doing a lot more research with T20s because obviously the T20 World Cup is a bit closer. But yeah, I definitely see a lot of variation. I see the likes of Dwayne Pretorius and Andile Petlokwayo. He's in the ODIs. I really would have liked to see his variation more there. But yeah, I do see pace off the ball.
So look, I think from my end, I'm all for spin. I actually would like to see one T20 where we play three spinners. We've got Keshav Maharaj, who does well in the test format, who I think is good enough an ODI spinner to actually take wickets and not hold an end. And also then have George Linda, because I think we spoke about the three all-rounder balance that South Africa would like to have. So if you have one spinning all-rounder in there with two seamers, it gives you an opportunity to actually pick two other spinners with either one of Kagiso and Anrich and Nokia. So that's going to be, I'd like to see that. I don't think that will happen. Knowing how Mark Boucher thinks and how South Africa's thought throughout the years, we'll probably go with our strength, which is pace, and they're going to try go for guys like even Lazard Williams. Lazard Williams is a very interesting kind of a bowler for Sri Lankan conditions. So that's something that we might consider. Estelle, I've got one last question on YouTube. Do you expect Chandemal to open in these matches? We know that he's back in the squad.
In the ODIs, at least for the first couple, I don't think that he will open. They'll probably go with Minod Bhanuka once again. He didn't have a superb series against India, but I think at the moment he looks like the best option for, particularly for the ODIs, since he's young and there's some time to go. In the T20s, Kusal Pereira should be back. So I don't think, once again, I don't think Chandimal will get the opportunity to kind of slot in there. But of course, there's always the chance that Sri Lanka will opt to play him in the middle order. I hope that doesn't happen, but you never know, because there's, like I said, there are spots up for grabs, and he's earned his spot by playing well during the tournament, which basically was conducted to select this squad for the T20 World Cup. So you never know, but at the moment, I don't see him coming into the playing 11. He's more of kind of the backup wicketkeeper opener in the squad.
Oh, okay. So now we've reached the time of the show where we're going to ask you to give us predictions. What you think is going to happen in the ODIs and what you think is going to happen in the T20s. I'm going to start with you, Estelle. Is it a Sri Lanka win? Is it a whitewash? Well, what do you think is going to happen on both ODI and T20?
I have to say Sri Lanka. I think considering the surfaces on offer and the bowling attack Sri Lanka has, probably it'll be close, probably a 2-1, but Sri Lanka will win the ODIs. T20s, I think South Africa will have the edge. Might go 2-1 or even 3-0 there.
Okay, that's a fair analysis. Chris, do you agree with Estelle or do you have a different outcome?
Maybe it's both of us just showing our allegiances. I won't be as emphatic as I have been almost ironically before other series. I think I almost see them going two different ways. That maybe it's just based on what happened in Ireland. I can see us winning both series, but in both cases 2-1. And I don't know. This is just in my mind. It's that in the ODIs we'll lose the first one and then win the second two, and then the T20s will be the opposite, or win the first two and lose the last. So I think we're slight favorites, but nothing here is a foregone conclusion.
Seppo?
Yeah, my prediction is similar to Chris's. I do see us losing the first game because we tend to need time to assess conditions, and the first game plan generally doesn't work. So yeah, I do expect us to lose the first game, but then win both series, probably 2-1 or possibly 3-0 for the T20s. But once again, first game we're probably going to lose in both series, and then like clean our act up towards the end. That's how I see it happening.
Okay. Yeah, I expected a whitewash in Ireland and I didn't get that. So I'm not gonna go.
One game away from, and that was a terrible day, Umpo. You woke up that morning and you also felt macacas. It was a terrible day to be a South African. Just saying.
But that game was very keenly followed in Sri Lanka, actually. The one that South Africa lost.
Yeah,
exactly.
It was followed everywhere, bruh. It was followed everywhere.
With that 100. But yeah, so I'll go. I'll go 2-1 on both to South Africa on both sides, but a decider in both series. So we're gonna go 1-1 into both series deciders, and South Africa will come out because I think on a balance of probabilities, I think South Africa has a stronger squad from an ODI and a T20 perspective. Yeah, I think that brings us to the end of our show. Estelle, thank you very much for joining us. Really enjoyed a Sri Lankan point of view instead of a one-sided South Africa's going to win everything. And to also get some insight into what's going on from the back end, because a lot of our people will be asking us on commentary as to where's so and so. Now we can tell them what's going on. We look forward to. We're going to have some World Cup previews, and if Sri Lanka's in our group, we probably might call on you again to give us a Sri Lankan perspective. But we thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Thank you.
Sure. Have a good time, Estelle. Thank you very much. Gents, we've got commentary this week. We've got South Africa versus Sri Lanka. Let me just put up the Sri Lanka tour dates live on 1WSR.com, on the YouTube channel, also on Gorilla SA on Twitter. We'll be bringing you a watch along. You'll be watching us, bringing you the game and getting you that information as well. We're doing radio commentary for it, so please do like and subscribe to our channel. First ODI starts on Thursday, then there's one on Saturday and on Tuesday, then the T20 start next week Friday, and they will end the following week Tuesday. But also, most importantly, is the women's tour. So we'll be doing not simultaneous broadcast, but we'll be doing both. So the West Indies women versus South Africa women starting tonight at 8 p.m. So please do join us for that. And then on Thursday, Sunday is going to be wild because it's like just after midnight. But we've got that covered. Most importantly, please do subscribe to our channel so you can get notified when we go live. Final words, gents. How do you see the series going? And yeah, how things. Final words before we close out. Simple.
Vuma bavuma vuma. Let's go.
Yes, that's the South Africa team, by the way. And Chris.
Yeah, no, I think we've covered almost everything that I have to say. Yeah, excited to see some cricket, see some players cement their places, and see the women's game as well.
Yeah, so join us later for the night shoot. Yes.
Sorry. Good to see our women win for the Invincibles, which became my team during the 100.
Yes. The 100 was very good. Dane Fanika, we want that type of form. So bring that form with Chloe Tryon, who wasn't at the Oval Invincibles, but Shabnim was there, and so was Marizan. So we want W's, because tonight, myself and Tempo will be on the night shift from 10 to 10 for that second innings. So yeah. But yeah, so thanks guys. We'll chat soon. You will see us in a few hours. But thank you very much. Until next week on the Full Quota podcast. Thank you very much. Goodbye and good night. And lesale kakahiso.